So I first took 2.5 feet of thread from the spool. Depending on the kinds of beads I'm using, I sometimes wax a thread of the brick stitch portion. Because these Miyuki round beads are mostly slippery and not a matte finish, I'm going to wax my thread so the tension is tighter and more consistent, but this is an optional step. I am using So Fine thread gloss in lemon peel on the KO 06RD beading thread with a number 12 tulip long needle. To wax my thread, I hold the working thread I pulled off the spool under my thumb against the wax and pull the length through to coat it. Then I hold the thread between my fingers and pull the thread through to get off any excess wax and ensure it's properly coated. Next, you're going to thread your needle. I put the needle onto the thread rather than trying to put the thread into the needle hole. The way I work to prevent hand cramping is holding the spool in my left hand while using my pointer finger and thumb to hold the beadwork. Now you can string on 3 A beads and 3 B beads and bring to the bottom near the spool. Go up through the bottom of the 3 A beads with your needle. Once you pull tight, your A and B bead columns should be stacked beside each other with your working thread of 2.5 feet coming out through the top of the 3 A beads. And here's an image of what it should look like so far. Then you can go back down through the top of the 3 B beads. Next, add 3 C beads and go down through the previous row of 3 B beads. Go up through the 3 C beads you just added. Make sure your tension is tight here, so all your bead columns are nicely stacked together. You're going to continue to follow the pattern for the base of the brick stitch, weaving your thread and creating a solid foundation to add your brick stitch and eventually your fringe to. So as you can see here, there's no loose or excess thread, and the bead columns are tightly next to each other. This is the tension you should keep throughout the rest of the base for your brick stitch. We're going to start the brick stitch. Add 1 A bead to your working thread and tuck the needle under the thread of the first stitch between the 3 A beads and the 3 B beads. Go up through the bottom of the A bead and tighten. Next, grab 1 B bead and tuck the needle under the thread of the second stitch between the 3 B and 3 C bead columns. Go up through the bottom of the 1 B bead and tighten. Ensure there's no loose or excess thread and the 2 brick stitch beads are nicely adjoined and sitting flat on the base. Following the pattern, continue to add beads to your brick stitch portion and build it up until you have completed the triangle up until the last row of 2 beads. Once you reach the last row on the brick stitch of 2 beads, it will be time to create the earring finding loop and optionally add your finding to the beadwork, though you can wait until after to use pliers and add the finding then. Pick up 3 A beads onto your needle and then your earring finding and add 3 more A beads to your working thread. Go down the bead beside the one where your working thread is coming out. As you can see here, this is the direction of the thread and which bead to go down. Go back up the original adjoining brick stitch bead and up the first 3 A beads through your finding and back down the next 3 A beads. And through the bead below the 3 A stack. Ensure your thread is tight and that both the bead stack and the finding aren't loose. Now you're going to go down the single B bead or middle bead of the second row of brick stitch from the top. You're going to continue to weave your thread through the beads in the top portion of the brick stitch to lock in your thread so you don't have to tie it off and have any visible knots anywhere. Go down the next B bead on the third row from the top and up the adjoining B bead on the same row. Continue back down the original B bead. These next steps differ slightly from the PDF tutorial, but the point is to weave your thread through the top portion of the beadwork. Next, go down the middle bead in the 4th row of the single C bead, down to the next row through one of the 2 C beads, and up the other, back down the original C bead, and down the 5th row middle D bead. Do another loop lock and cut your working thread off. You can optionally thread zap the little piece of thread sticking out. Adjust your beadwork so it is flat. It should now look something like this. Now we're going to pull 6.5 feet of thread off the spool and use our loom needle to do the fringe. This is my culture bead needle roll made by Catherine Orr's grandmother, and I'm just obsessed with it. Carefully follow the fringe pattern. Pick up your beads on the first row of fringe and add them to your new working thread. Bring the beads to the base of the brick stitch. It should look something like this. Now pick up the single G bead and go up through the fringe, but not the G bead, and up through the first column of 3 A beads. Pull your thread tight and go down the next column of 3 B beads and pull your thread tight again. But you don't want your thread so tight that it warps the fringe strand. Adjust as needed so it is relaxed but there isn't visible thread. As you can see, I'm doing that by slightly pulling down and rolling the beads between my fingers. Continue to follow the pattern for the fringe, repeating the previous steps and ensuring your tension is relaxed but not loose. Once your fringe is done, you're going to change back to your number 12 tulip long needle. At this point, your working thread should be coming out of the last stack of 3 A beads. Now you're going to go up through the closest single A bead in the first row of brick stitch. This will start the process of locking in your thread, similar to what we did for the top portion of brick stitch. However, you have to be careful with how tight you pull because it might warp or over tighten the last strand of fringe. Just be aware of that, but continue to weave your needle through adjoining beads until the last strand of fringe feels locked in place without being warped. Notice how I'm testing the last strand of fringe to make sure it's not going to come out and that it's not too tight that it is warped. If your fringe work does feel too tight and warped, a little tip is to steam your earrings over a pot of boiling water so the thread relaxes more. You can do this by putting your earrings on a utensil or coat hanger so your hands don't get burned. Continue to roll the beads between your fingers and gently tug down to relax the fringe, and go back to steaming briefly until you get the desired tension on your fringe.